The following segment is sponsored by Food City.
Welcome into the Stateline Sports Reporters podcast. I'm executive producer of sports and special projects Heather Williams, flying solamente on this podcast, kind of, sort of. We're going to have a couple of guests joining me in this one. I cannot believe it is 8 months until the Speedway Classic hits the high banks of the Bristol Motor Speedway. I use that metaphorically because, of course, they won't be playing baseball on the high banks, but I'm pretty excited about this event coming to Bristol. I grew up a huge baseball fan. My first love as far as sports goes, Kansas City girl, Kansas City Royals. When I was growing up, 85 Royals, Frank White, George Brett, Willie Wilson, Amos Otis. Those are all my dudes. So the opportunity to see baseball come here, and two teams that I covered once upon a time as well. The Reds AA affiliate was in Chattanooga when I worked there in the early 2000s. And then also being in Chattanooga, I went down to Atlanta a lot and covered the Braves. So to see those two organizations come here to Bristol to play a baseball game is super exciting. In the lead up to that, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of different guests and opportunity to talk to people associated with the two organizations. This week, I got a chance to talk to two former players, Sean Casey, which, if you know anything about baseball and you follow baseball, you're really familiar with. The mayor, played for the Reds, and then Michael Bourn, who played for the Braves, just about what this event's going to mean to the sport of baseball and to the sport of NASCAR, how excited they are about this event, and what it's going to be like for these players to play inside of a racetrack. So couple of really cool Stateline sit downs. We'll start off with Sean Casey. What went through your mind when you heard that they were going to play a baseball game inside of a racetrack?
I was like, yeah, let's go. I mean, I'm excited. I think one of the things, Heather, that I look back on is when I was with the Red Sox in 2008, we played a game at the LA Coliseum. It was like 120,000 people. They had to makeshift the field to be on there. And I remember as a player thinking, what a cool experience this is. Like the fact that Major League Baseball made this happen for all these fans, for the players, it was so unique. And as I see Major League Baseball doing what they're doing and how they did the Field of Dreams games a few years ago out there in Iowa, and then they did Rickwood last year, and they're trying to, have different venues. I just thought Bristol Motor Speedway, let's go, man. One of the greatest tracks in NASCAR, so much history right there in Tennessee, which is, when you talk about the Reds versus the Braves, I mean, there's probably a lot of the fan base is equidistant to Bristol. And for those players, it's going to be such a cool experience being able to see the game from a different vantage point, not just a stadium, but being at Bristol Motor Speedway.
So, I mean, you talked about the experience of playing in the Coliseum. But what was the baseball like? Like, was it any different, or once you stepped in the lines, was it just baseball?
Nah, you know what? I think the one thing that was a little different, and it'd be interesting to see how they do it at Bristol too, because I would assume they don't have the proper dimensions that a Major League Baseball field would have, like 330 feet down the right field line, 375 in the gaps, 4 to 410 in dead center. So I remember at the Coliseum, the left field wall was like 290 or something, 280, like almost like a Little League distance. And they put a huge wall straight up. So it'll be interesting to see at Bristol how they're going to have to make the makeshift stadium for that game. But however they do it, it'll be really fun for those guys that are playing in that game and for the spectators that are able to watch the game in such a unique venue.
I think the dimensions at Bristol are bigger than you think. I think they're going to have a pretty good distance down the line. So I think.
Are they? Wow.
Yeah,
well, then that'll be cool.
So yeah, along those lines, are you a race fan? Have you ever watched the racing?
You know what, Heather, one of the things is I have been a race fan from afar. I've never been to a NASCAR event, but I know so many of my friends are NASCAR guys. I've been in the pit, and so many people talk to me about the power. Those cars, there's so much power, the athleticism of the drivers, the pit crews, what they have to do. It's the ultimate team sport of getting guys in and out of there and the strategy and stuff. So, I'm really excited to get to Bristol too, and to see what that just the power of that track, of what it looks like, and imagining those cars. But I need to get out to an event. I've run into Dale Earnhardt Jr. before, Jeff Gordon, a few other guys throughout my career. And, it's amazing to see the athletes that those guys are and what they can do with those cars.
All right, so the Reds. I'll let you know. I used to cover the AA team for the Reds years ago. So I know
in Chattanooga.
In Chattanooga, yeah, I worked there for 10 years, and they were the Reds affiliate for 6 of those years, I think. So I used to follow way closer than I do now. But how's this season looking? How exciting are the Reds? Excited for the Reds for the season, and then also to come to Bristol?
Well, I think, first off, I think this experience for those Reds players is going to be absolutely incredible to come to Bristol. A lot of NASCAR fans out there in Cincinnati too, so the crossover will be incredible. But I think with the hiring of Terry Francona coming into this season, one of the greatest managers of all time, on his way to Cooperstown, he was retired. I don't think they thought they were going to be able to get him, and sure enough, when they had fired David Bell, they went after Tito, and then here's Tito coming with such pedigree as one of the greatest managers ever and gets a lot out of his players. Then you start to think about the team, and they have a superstar in waiting in Ellie De La Cruz. The power speed combination's incredible. Matt McLean's coming back from injury. He was one of their best players. Spencer Steer and Jake Fraley and Encarnacio Strand and so many good players on this team. With the Reds and the rotation they have with Hunter Green, all the way down to Nick Lodolo and Abbott and all the guys that they have. I really believe there's a lot of excitement this year in Cincinnati, with a chance. They feel like they have the team that has a chance to win the whole thing. So I think at that point when they're in Bristol in August, we're really going to know what kind of year the Reds are having, and they could be right in the thick of a pennant race at that point.
So you talked about, you kind of looking at NASCAR from afar and maybe checking it out because of this event. Do you think that this has the ability to also pull people the other way? Like this really has the ability to maybe be a crossover event where baseball might get some racing fans and race, but vice versa.
I think that's what's great about it, Heather, is that's the truth. I mean, listen, for all the fans that are racing fans, maybe Bristol brings them to like, oh man, there's a baseball game going on with some star power, 2 really good teams. I'd like to check that out. And, maybe that brings, some fans from NASCAR to baseball, and the same thing with baseball. I think when you get out to Bristol and you see the history and how incredible that place is, and that, where it's located there in Tennessee, I think there's also a lot of fans that could be, man, well, check out what this NASCAR thing's about. So I think it's a win-win for NASCAR and Major League Baseball.
My initial reaction is I love it, because there's different things going on now in different sports. Like you got the NBA in-season tournament, so they're growing the game and making it exciting within the season. This is another way that Major League Baseball is able to grow the game. We had a game in Rickwood last year. They also had the game in Mexico City that they've been doing. And so why not bring a game to Tennessee and make something different and be it inside a racetrack? I think that's amazing. I'm waiting to see it. I think the environment is going to be hostile, and it's going to be 2 great teams going against each other. So it'll be a great game to see.
Bristol's about halfway between Atlanta and Cincinnati, but it is probably pretty definitively Braves country. So how did, as a Braves former player and a Braves guy, how's it feel? How do you think the home field advantage will be for you guys here?
Oh, I think that'll be great, and I think that's going to be another fight. You got in between Atlanta, like you say, Cincinnati, so both fan bases get a chance to get to see their team in a memorable moment. So I think that's a great setup by Major League Baseball, but I think that is Braves country. We all know that about Tennessee, so you're going to see a lot of Braves fans. You're going to see the A represented very well, and I actually want to see how it's set up, what's it going to look like, and just be a part of that unbelievable moment.
So, if you followed racing, or are you a race fan of any kind, or is this kind of your entry point into learning about racing?
You know what? I'm not a big race fan, but I do know some race cars. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to like Michael Schumacher for some reason. I don't know why. I guess I like the name, and I knew him. I know, of course, Dale Earnhardt. Of course, we know him. We know Lewis Hamilton, of course, and I know some. I actually got a chance to meet Tyler Lockett this year with the Jordan brand, and so I got to meet him for the first time. He was at the the World Series, and we had a great conversation. And to me, it's just interesting. I like to learn about other sports other than mine and the things that they do to get prepared and how they get focused, how they train, things like that. I actually had, so a lot of people, it's a guy named Coach Free. When I was a young baseball player coming up, he was my trainer, and we used to work at the University of Houston. I went to the University of Houston. So the next year I'm coming in, he told me, well, I was leaving, about to go into my season, but the next year he told me, he's like, Mike, I'm not going to be able to train you this year. And I was like, why? He was like, I'm leaving to go train the people that actually change out the tires and do the rotation for the cars. I didn't even know people train for that. And I was like, what? And he was like, I said, you leaving me to go train? He's like, yeah, Mike, they paying me a lot of money. I was like, well, you know what? Go make your money. But it was interesting to hear him say that, because I didn't even know that was a thing until I seen it as I was watching a race. And I'm just passing by the channels. And I'm like, man, they are going fast. It really matters. It's time, it's seconds. It can matter for the driver. So you have to really be in shape to change those tires, get them off of there. Those tires are heavy. So I didn't even know that was a thing. But that's the thing you learn as you're talking to people and you learn another sport.
Just a little insight. Most of those guys are either former football players or baseball players. There's a lot of former baseball players that are
really
like college players. Yeah, a lot of former college baseball players are on those pit crews, and then a lot of former college football players.
Really? See, I didn't even know that. That's interesting. But that's the thing that you want to learn on the inside of a sport, because in your sport, it's inside stuff that people don't know and intel, and they want to break that down. So, with NASCAR, I want to break other things down too and see what's going on.
So do you think that this is a good opportunity for baseball players to learn a little bit about racing, and vice versa, racing players to learn, or racing fans to learn a little bit about baseball? I mean, it's kind of a good crossover for the two sports.
I think it's a great crossover, to be honest with you, Heather. That's what me and Tyler were talking about when we were in the suite. I didn't even know who he was. I just seen the Jordans that he had on. I was like, man, those are some nice Jordans. And then he came over and started talking and told us he was a racer for Jordan on his team. I'm like, what? Then it just kept going, and I started to learn about racing. He started telling us how he drives, how his shoulders have to be strong, and how injuries that he's had. We was like, man, we were amazed of him, and we were at the World Series. We want to hear all about him instead of him hearing about us. So yes, I think it's a good crossover, and that's how you make friends along the way and learn just different avenues that people are taking.
So what do we need to be looking out for if I'm just a regular person here in Bristol and I don't know anything about baseball, especially from the Braves perspective? What am I looking for next year?
Are you talking about winning wise, or are you talking about
the team game? like what kind of team do you, I mean, I know it's early and there be spring training and people coming and going, but what about the Braves should be interesting to somebody who's maybe not a baseball fan here in Bristol?
I think they're one of the best teams that is in baseball. Well-rounded, deep lineup, great pitching. This year they were not healthy, so they lost Spencer Strider early on in the year. They lost Ronald Acuna, who was one of the best superstars of the game. Now, one thing I would tell you, if at this game, I think that they would hit batting practice, because nowadays they don't hit batting practice a lot, but they would hit batting practice. I would encourage all the fans to get there early, because of the people that will be hitting batting practice. You got Ella De La Cruz for the Cincinnati Reds. You got Ronald Acuna for the Braves. You got Matt Olson, who just hit 50 homers for the Braves 2 seasons ago. You got Austin Riley, who's hit 30 home runs in 3 seasons. So they're going to put on a show during batting practice. I would encourage fans to get there early just to see the show. That's what you want to see as a fan at first. Because the game, you want the game to be exciting, but you can't predict what the game is going to be. It could be a pitch and duel where it be 1-0. It could be an offensive game where it's 10-8. You don't know that going into the game. But the BP, they're going to put on the show. So fans first, that's what I would encourage them to do, because it's only one game. So they're going to be out there taking BP, the whole group.
Sponsored by Food City.